Hi there, my name is Marley and welcome to my June reading wrap-up. In June, I managed to read 5 books once again, so I am on track with my goal of reading 5 books every month, yay! So I'm just going to talk about the books that I read this month and let you know what I thought and if I would recommend them for you guys. So the first book that I read was Second Chance Summer by Matson. I've read a couple of her books before, so I wanted to just finish off and read her last couple of books. Second Chance Summer is about a girl whose family goes back to their cottage or their summer house that they always used to go to in the summer, but they haven't been back to in years because everyone's just gotten too busy. But when her parents tell her and her siblings that her dad has been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, they all decide to, drop their busy schedules and go there together to have like a final summer as a family. But she is not looking forward to going there because the last summer that she was there, some drama happened with her best friend or ex-best friend and a boy. So as you can tell, this book does have a lot of sadness as it does deal with the father's illness and him getting, sicker as the summer does go on. But I also felt it to be very enjoyable and heartfelt as well, as it does deal with the relationship that our main character has with her siblings and with the ex-best friend I mentioned and some new friends and that boy that I mentioned as well. The main character really grows throughout the book. It's very much like a coming of age story like Matson normally deals with in her books. It wasn't really a unique story, but as I said, it was pretty enjoyable. So if you want like a summer story with some romance, friendship, and family relationships, I would recommend this book. I did enjoy it. The second book that I finished this month was Security by Gina Wohlsdorf. I should probably take this freaking $6 sticker off. That would be good. This is like a thriller or slasher book, which I've never read before. It takes place in a hotel so basically there's this new hotel called Manderley that's going to be opening soon, like having their grand opening. And there is a killer on the loose who is killing a bunch of the hotel employees that are there working to get the hotel ready. And it really seemed to have taken inspiration from The Shining, which was sort of ironic because the weekend that I finished this book was also the weekend that I first watched The Shining. So I was able to see how there's a lot of inspiration probably taken from The Shining as it dealt with a hotel and murdering. And there was that maze in the yard that they go out to at the end of the movie that they also have one of those in here. So if you're a fan of The Shining, then I would recommend this to you. But overall, I wasn't super impressed with this book. I did read it over the course of about a year as I was reading it with my boyfriend, and we would, not want to read it that much. Like there's other things to do together besides reading a book, so it was pretty slow to get through it. And I think it took away from the reading experience, switching back and forth with who was reading out loud to each other. I would recommend reading this in a shorter amount of time so you could actually like follow what was going on. But yeah, we didn't overly like this book, which was kind of because of the uniqueness of it, which is that it was told through a different narration than a lot of books. It was told from like, I don't want to give away who the narrator really was, but throughout the novel, it literally seems like the narrator is the cameras, the security cameras throughout the hotel. It's almost as if you're in the security or control room where you see all of the cameras. So you can see one of the characters in the ballroom, one of the characters in the kitchen, and the narration is switching back and forth constantly, which could be a little bit confusing because one second it would be like Tessa's in the ballroom doing this, the killer's in the elevator doing this, like all not even having like a separation between them. It was sort of interesting being told that way, but it also could be kind of confusing. It almost read more like a movie script because of that. It just felt like the back and forth really matched with like how a scene would be cut to go back and forth between two scenes, whereas in novels you don't really see that. A couple other things that I didn't love about the book is that it could be a little cringy. There was a romance that was like a little bit incestuous, and as a little spoiler alert, the killer, there wasn't really a good reveal for the killer. It just really was like a slasher book. So I wouldn't overly recommend this book unless that whole unique narration thing sounded interesting to you, about how it was sort of like a movie script more than a book and how the point of view was like from the security cameras. The next book that I read was Save the Date by Matson. This book was pretty fun, although it did sort of annoy me. It may be my least favorite Matson book that I read. It's about a teenage girl named Charlie, who is the youngest sibling in the Grant family, which is made up of the 2 parents and then 3 brothers and 1 sister, and then Charlie. So growing up, the mom has always wrote this comic strip that has gotten quite popular. So the Grant family is pretty well known. The mom would basically write these comic strips based on their real lives, but kind of like change them up a little bit to make them more entertaining. And in this book, the comic strip is finally coming to an end after like 25 years. Also during this weekend, it is Linny, the sister's wedding. So that's the big event that we're leading up to. That's why it's called Save the Date. And Linny's getting married at the parents' house. So Charlie, as the youngest, she's about 17, she gets wrapped up in a lot of the planning and dealing with everything that goes wrong with the wedding, which, spoiler alert, basically everything that could go wrong in a wedding goes wrong, which is sort of something that annoyed me. I just felt like so many things were going wrong. I was like, are you kidding? Like, that was kind of the point of the book, I guess, dealing with all these hurdles and Charlie having to fix them. But I just felt very annoyed by it, especially because they were leading up to the 17-year-old sister to deal with everything. Like, I was like, well, where are the parents? Where's like the bridesmaids helping out? Like, I was like, why is the 17-year-old sister literally dealing with all of these details for the wedding? Like, it seemed a little bit unrealistic to me, but it was cute and it did overall have a pretty good message. And it was pretty fun. As I said, it was a big cast of characters as she comes from a big family. And then a lot of the extended family was also there for the wedding. So there was that typical like wedding craziness going on. So it was a fun dynamic and it kind of made me wish that I had like a bunch of siblings and like a bigger family. Not a super amazing book, but I would recommend it if you're into books about weddings or big families. The next book that I read was Amy and Rodgers' Epic Detour, again by Morgan Matson. This was really a Morgan Matson month for me. It's pretty similar to her other books, I noticed, as it deals a lot with family dynamics with a little bit of romance thrown in. I find that I want more romance from the last few books that I've read from her, but it is kind of nice that it deals with family so much. So this particular story follows Amy. She's going through a pretty rough time as her father recently passed away from a car accident, and she's been living alone at her house in California as her twin brother is in rehab, and her mother has moved to Connecticut to get their new house ready because they're going to be selling their California house and moving to Connecticut, which honestly, that was a pretty sucky thing for the mom to do. Like, your children's dad, your husband just recently died. Like, literally it was like 2 months or a month ago, and you just like leave your kids and like go set up this new house. Like, thinking about it, that's like pretty messed up, but I guess it's what created this story. And I guess the reason that her mom does leave her there is that she's seen as like the good one, like the responsible child, so the mom like trusts her to watch the house. But anyway, this story starts when Amy's mom wants her to bring the car from California to Connecticut so the mom can have the car, but Amy is no longer driving, as you can kind of figure out why she's no longer driving. Car accident, right? So Amy's mom ends up getting her friend's son Roger to drive Amy to Connecticut as he needs to get there anyways. So Amy and Roger set off on this trek across the country, and the route that the mom had chosen for them to go is seen as pretty boring, but they decide to take like a more exciting route, and that's the whole thing with the detour. They end up going to a couple stops that Amy wants to go to and a couple that Roger wants to go to. Like, he's pining after his ex-girlfriend, so he wants to stop and see her, that kind of thing. What did I think of the book? Honestly, I had really high hopes because I thought the premise was really fun, like going on this fun road trip detour with these 2 characters, Amy and Roger, but I was a little bit disappointed. As I've mentioned, I kind of wanted more from the romance. It just was a lot of internal dialogue with the main character dealing with her family issues, which of course is important, but I just wish there was like more cute scenes between the main couple. They were cute, but I just wish there was more, which maybe means I just need to read more romances. Like, if I'm craving that in these books, I'm not finding it, I guess I just need to read more romances. So recommend me any romances that you think I should read. So overall, it was pretty similar to Second Chance Summer. They both dealt with, you know, losing a father and family dynamics, which is a hint of romance. So if this sounded interesting to you, I would read it, episode. The 5th book and final book that I read in June was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. It's the newest Hunger Games book. It is technically a prequel that follows President Snow when he's about 18, and it's the 10th Hunger Games. I mentioned this in another video, but I went into it not very excited. I was like, President Snow, ew, like not interested in hearing about them. What about Hamish? What about like some other more interesting character? But I'll say, I honestly loved this book. I found it so interesting. Basically, President Snow and his family are still reeling from the war, which happened about 10 years ago. So he was a child during that time with the, you know, uprising with the districts and everything. And his family is actually pretty poor. They were affected by the war a lot. Obviously, not as much as the districts. Like, he still has that privilege over them, but he's struggling. Like, he's eating cabbage and that's it. Like, his family can't really afford things. So he's really, really set on graduating and continuing his education so that he can get a better life for himself and for his family and get back that Snow royalty kind of thing. Snow always lands on top, as they say. So all of the students end up being chosen to mentor the tributes for the 10th Hunger Games. So I found that very, very interesting. I don't want to spoil too much. It was interesting seeing the first time there were ever mentors in the games and seeing that there were a lot of things that we see in the 75th Hunger Games that were not implemented yet. Like, people aren't forced to watch the games. They just introduced like sponsors and sending in gifts to the tributes in this book. It's not as flamboyant of an event. It's not as entertainment themed. It's literally just like they're putting kids in there to kill each other, and they don't have all of that like extravagance that we see in the regular Hunger Games. Also, President Snow's character, it was interesting seeing and like understanding where he's coming from. Like, obviously he's still evil and we see his decline, so to speak. Like, his morals are not the best at the beginning, but you can sort of understand where he's coming from, and you sort of see him get more and more like desperate for power and stuff throughout the book. So I found that very interesting. I feel like I could honestly talk about this book forever, so I'll just say overall very good. If you've been skeptical about reading this because it's about President Snow, I would really recommend it. And it's actually left off where I feel like Suzanne could actually write more. I've seen some other people saying that because we don't get to see him become President Snow, like the president. So I feel like there's more story to be told, honestly. I mean, there's 75 years worth of Hunger Games. I really hope that Suzanne writes more sequels or prequels, because I will be here for them. I will read them. But anyways, that is my reading wrap up for June. I'm looking forward to July reading a lot, as there is a reading rush, which I'll be uploading my TBR for. So thanks for watching, whoever does. Overall, I really recommend this book, and that's pretty much it. All the other books I read this month were not amazing, so that kind of sucks. Sorry. Hopefully next month's a better reading month for me. So I'll see you in my next video. Subscribe if you want, and leave a comment about any recommendations you have for me, maybe romances, since I seem to be craving that. Thanks again. Bye.